Market's going lower. VIX is bid. We need to find some downside exposure. Sony getting some sell signals. I'm going to back into this and show you exactly why Sony is getting these sell signals and how this can give you some downside exposure to help balance your risk going forward. So in front of you is our Wall Street Wiretapper. This is the unusual option activity tool that we built. The goal of the Wall Street Wiretapper is to find names that we expect to outperform their volatility. Names that we expect that are gonna jump. So a name that really jumped out at me, look 20 days, stocks between 50 and 75, the top 10 stocks. As I went through these names, EWJ really stood out to me because EWJ I know is an ADR on Japan, not a specific company. So if I'm looking at the beta risk of my overall portfolio, this EWJ may present as a nice global hedge. But now I need to look further into it because the Wall Street Wiretapper is telling me that over the past 20 days, EWJ is the second most active name between 50 and 75. And we think that the implied volatility is underpriced relative to the massive amounts of unusual option activity that we're finding. So after we find a name on the Wall Street Wiretapper, then I want to go and see how it looks on something called the high value target tool. And that's right in front of you. Now, this is just math. We use the Wall Street Wiretapper to find the names that we think are going to outperform their volatility. And then we use this high value target tool. This is just a 21-day average of its historical volatility, 3 standard deviations, 4 standard deviations. So we want to see when a name historically breaks down from its average. EWJ, you can see right here, it's already come off. It may get a buy signal. So if you're looking for downside exposure right away, you may be thinking, well, this might not be the best play, but I'm getting a lot of questions from clients that are looking for downside protection. So don't just look short term. If I put EWJ on a weekly, that's a different story, right? Now we look at it going back to 2018, the pandemic hit, buy signals, a little sell signal here. That didn't work out too well because the market consolidated and then ran up higher. But now we're getting sell signals on weekly. This is a lot of data. So for someone looking for a portfolio hedge, this may make a lot of sense. But then the next step that I'm going to do is EWJ. What the heck is it? It's time to look under the hood. Simple Google search, EWJ Holdings. It's an iShares product. Go here, let's click on portfolio. And really, I'm doing this because I want to see the makeup of the portfolio, right? EWJ is just an artificially created ETF. But what this is tracking or what it's holding is you have Toyota, you have SoftBank, you have Sony. So now what I want to do is EWJ, it's expensive, at least on a weekly. If somebody's looking for a portfolio hedge, this seems to make a lot of sense. But let's also see, let's look at Toyota, let's look at SoftBank, let's look at Sony. Maybe we can find something that's even expensive to the ETF that we think is kind of expensive. Think or swim, easy enough. Just hit that beaker. I'm going to take off that high value target study. Comparison. Okay. And let's look at Sony right here. Okay. And then let's also look at Toyota. 2 other names that are big players in the EWJ ETF, right? We know that already. How do we know that? Well, we looked up the holdings. If you look at it, Toyota, SoftBank, and Sony, that's 10% of the overall ETF. So not 10% correlated, it's 10% of the overall portfolio. It's the same thing. I would think the correlations are probably over 80%. So on the same chart, same weekly, we go back and look at it. Well, oh, look at Sony. Sony relative to Toyota and relative to EWJ. Now what I want to do is let's go back to that high value target tool. Here we are, EWJ weekly. We already know we're getting the sell signal. What about Toyota? Same thing. What about Sony? Same thing. We talk about this all the time. Correlations. These 3 are the same exact thing right now. So as the market goes down, if you find your portfolio getting worked, if you're not balanced and you're looking for balance, consider buying some puts and correlated products to Japan. So now let's go look at the options data. And I'll just look Sony and EWJ for this. Sony, what I really like about it at first glance is, wow, that's really cheap volatility, almost too cheap. And when I say almost too, wow, these are so low. Did these not move at all? So because that vol is so low. What I want to do now is I'm just going to go to a plain old stock chart and I'm going to go short term because I want to see what kind of size do I need to get any kind of hedge with EWJ. If the darn thing, it moves. What are they talking about? That vol is way too low. 67, 70 over a week and a half span. EWJ, let's go back to the options. And before I go back to the options, I want you to look at this. EWJ yesterday has a high of 68.35 and a low of 67.20, so about a $1.30 range between its high and its low, but it definitely can move, right? It's not just stuck in the mud. EWJ, volatility is 22%. If we look here, which is going to be the at the money straddle, or you can do the strangle, buying the calls, buying the puts. Over the next 42 days, the market's pricing in $4.25 of movement. So that's about 6%, 7% of movement. This is so unbelievably inexpensive that if somebody's long a ton of deltas, long a ton of stock and getting killed on this down move, a phenomenal place to find yourself a hedge is going to be in April. EWJ, and I like EWJ because the vol is even cheaper than Sony, and you can load up on these as much as you want and understand that if US starts rallying, you start making a whole bunch of money on those holdings, whatever you invest right here is going to be a loser because you're doing this to hedge. Now, if the market continues to go down, if volatility continues to go higher, these will be a massive winner. But again, not every trade is for every person. You have to ask yourself the question, does this trade fit into my portfolio? And again, as far as a recap, the alpha male, the reason why we started with EWJ is because of the Wall Street Wiretapper. The Wall Street Wiretapper is going to look at all optionable names and find the names according to our scans that we feel have the highest likelihood of outperforming its implied volatility. My name is Jonathan Rose. I'm the owner of Masters in Trading.